Throughout history, innovation has come in many unexpected forms. These innovations often bring with them sweeping changes to specific industries or even entire economies depending on what part of the system has been improved. However, for every world-changing invention, there will likely be any number of failures. Today, we look at one of these failed attempts to revolutionize the way we travel the seas. This is the story of the roller ships. Despite being a land-based species, for millennia humanity has found ways to traverse the many waterways of the planet. Ever since developing primitive boats, we have worked to find ways to improve our ability to travel on the water. One of the major reasons for finding these improvements was the need for efficient trade with other nations and communities. Merchant trading has been a part of life for millennia, and before the invention of aircraft, the only way to reach distant parts of the globe was to travel over the seas or trek on trading routes over land. This originally focused predominantly on goods. However, the world was starting to grow more connected through the expansion of world powers, and a new industry started to grow with it. This industry was the transportation of people to these new lands, and what we know as the passenger ship would start to appear in the 19th century. During this period of time, the main means of propulsion was still sails despite the existence of experimental steamboat designs throughout the 18th century. In 1819, the United States would take a place in history for having the first steamship to cross the Atlantic Ocean with the SS Savannah. This was the first step into the adoption of the steamship, which would drastically affect the way that humanity would travel the seas. This began a new race between nations and their shipbuilders to build ships capable of greater and greater speed, which is where the topic of today's video comes in. By the late 19th century, steamships had become widely adopted and the norm for ship design, but the everlasting race to build the fastest still raged on. One of the main ways in which they did this was through the modification of hull design, such as making them slimmer or installing more engines and incorporating a more sleek design that was able to cut through the water. However, there were quite a few people who took the idea of modifying hull design to a new level. While some are exceptionally unique, we will be focusing on the idea of the roller ships today. The idea of the roller ship can be described as a mixture of the hydrofoil and the paddle steamer. The concept of the hydrofoil is that as a ship or boat gains speed, the foils will start to push the main hull out of the water until there is absolutely no contact between the hull and the water. This allows the ship to have little to no drag interference and therefore increases its speed. This was the general idea of the roller ship as well. However, unlike hydrofoils, the ship's hull would always be out of contact with the water. The first attempt at a roller ship was in the early 1880s by Robert Fryer, who had worked 12 years to develop the idea that would come about in the form of a prototype boat named Alice. While we do not know exactly what she looked like, the surviving descriptions state that the design had 3 large wheels that would provide propulsion and overall buoyancy connected to a triangular deck above. These wheels were very similar to regular paddle wheels as they were fit with buckets that would be able to push the vessel through the water. Interestingly enough, it was reported that he envisioned the vessel to be capable of not only movement on the water, but also amphibious activities. This likely would have been done through the usage of the buckets fitted on the wheels. Unfortunately, this design did not see success and was abandoned. That is, until a decade later, where another inventor was concocting an idea for an ultra-fast steamer that would change the shipbuilding industry forever. This inventor was Ernest Bazin, a French engineer that had previously seen success with designs for many different applications, from airships to safety lamps. With these successes, it was time to put his sights on revolutionizing the centuries-old industry of shipbuilding. While it cannot be confirmed if he had any inspiration from the previously mentioned Alice, Bazin's idea would be very similar, envisioning his invention being able to use massive rollers that would allow it to roll through the ocean. One could say that this design was effectively making a car with multiple wheels that held up the ship and propelled it forward through the water rather than on road or terrain. It took about 5 years of experimentation with models of the proposed design before he was confident that it would be successful. Bazin was able to secure funding from a wide variety of investors who were interested in his overall goal of an ocean-going steamer that would be capable of incredible speeds for such a ship at the time, over 32 knots. With this money, Bazin and his brother ordered the ship to be built by the shipyard in Saint-Denis near Paris. In August of 1896, the ship would finally be launched and christened after its inventor. As you can see in these photos and the plan, it was certainly a unique design. The ship was about 40 meters long and about 11.5 meters wide with a total weight of around 280 tons. At the top of the ship sat a rectangular platform that housed her important machinery, crew quarters, and the wheelhouse. However, the most important aspect of the ship were her rollers. The rollers followed the previously mentioned design principle in that they provided support and buoyancy for the ship, with 6 rollers being present and having a diameter of just under 10.9 meters. They floated in the water with a draft of about 3 meters. Each was connected to an axle, which itself had connections with the transmission. Looking at the design, it is apparent how similar it is to a car. Unlike the prototype Alice from the decade prior, Bazin decided to forego the buckets or paddles attached to the rollers, but rather kept them smooth and employed a lens shape that would use the laws of physics to its benefit. The concept behind this can best be described by imagining 2 thin plates that are put together in the form of a wheel shape. Notice how it creates a lens shape that has 2 relatively sharp edges to the front and back. If you put it in the water and then push it forward, it will glide through until water resistance forces it to slow down and eventually stop. This is due to the fact that as it drives forward, it is pushing the water and causing it to move back along the sides longitudinally. This is how the hull of a regular ship works, but with the usage of propellers to prevent the water resistance from stopping the hull completely. However, Bazin took another step when it came to this idea. Instead of pushing the cutting edge through the water, it would be given its own rotating movement before moving forwards. In this concept, the edge would now be parting the water rather than pushing it, and therefore be able to generate less resistance and be capable of reaching a further distance. Unlike a regular hull, which moved the water back longitudinally, these rollers would exert their effort vertically downwards and reduce resistance. Rollers using this concept would, in theory, be able to propel a ship at faster speeds while also saving fuel and providing the ship with stability for passengers and crew. According to Bazin, he believed that a steamer that incorporated his design would be able to carry 600 more tons of cargo at 10,000 horsepower than a regular ship at 30,000 horsepower and at a higher speed. The time finally came to test his design in March of 1897, firstly in the town of Rouen. At this time, the ship was equipped with steam engines that were able to provide 750 horsepower and would power both the rollers and the propeller towards the aft of the ship. Apparently, it was set up so that 550 horsepower would go to the propeller and the remaining 200 would go to the rollers. With this amount of horsepower and weight, a regular ship of the time and dimensions would only be capable of at most 18 to 19 knots. As stated previously, Bazin's claims stated that it would be capable of about twice that. Unfortunately for Bazin, he would find that his design was not up to his expectations. He wanted to try and cross the English Channel, however, during the preparation phase found significant issues. Firstly, the ship was found to be unstable and difficult to maneuver, with the propeller being too small. The most disappointing results of the tests was the action of the rollers. In theory, they were supposed to be able to reduce the amount of friction and resistance created, but rather increased them. Because of the smooth design, water would adhere to the sides and cause a braking action that slowed them much more than was expected. The fact that the rollers also worked to support the hull of the ship meant that they had extra weight to contend with while in motion on top of the weight of the adhered water that they had to move. The amount of power calculated by Bazin that would be adequate for each roller was found to be too small because of this weight, and as such caused the ship to not only be extremely slow, but also use more coal. Throughout the testing phase, the ship never made it past 7 knots and was a complete failure. Despite his ship's failings, he did not stop attempting to find a solution to the issue. Bazin would die in January of 1898, with reports stating that it was shortly after announcing that he had found the solution and would be incorporating it into a new ocean liner that used 8 rollers and was capable of even more impressive speeds. Due to his death and the disinterest in the design, this would never come about. The Ernest Bazin would then be listed for sale, but unfortunately would not be purchased and instead sold for scrap in Liverpool in 1899. 2 other designs were brought to the public many years after his death, firstly with the Aeromarine locomotive by an A.J. Haskins that would be propelled by 2 large rollers and claimed to reach a speed of 52 knots. After the announcement and the initial investing calls, nothing would ever be heard again from the project. In the 1930s, the magazine Modern Mechanics presented an idea for a roller ship known as the Turbo Wheel Liner that could reach speeds of 86 knots using 2 massive wheels to either side. As with many ideas from magazines such as these, nothing came out of the idea. While it may seem that we are done with the idea of roller ships, this is not the case, as we have one more that could be said to truly live up to the name of a roller ship. While Ernest Bazin found himself in a difficult situation following the failure of his invention, another attempt at a unique form of ship design was being undertaken across the Atlantic in the province of Ontario, Canada. Frederick Knapp was a Canadian lawyer who also had a passion for inventing, and it is said that his interest in creating a new type of ship was due to his interest in potentially gaining the attention of Canada's monarch, Queen Victoria. It was known that she often did not travel over the seas due to seasickness. Although it is not confirmed to be the reason, Knapp was said to have believed that if he was able to create a ship that would not encounter these issues for passengers, then she would be willing to travel to North America and request to visit the ship and its creator. In the modern era, we would refer to this sort of behavior as simping. While he also envisioned the ship rolling over the ocean, this was significantly different from both Fryer and Bazin, as his ship was the roller. With this design, it would be able to roll over the surface of the water and effectively negate any uncomfortable aspects of sea travel. In October of 1897, his ship, which was termed the roller boat, would be completed and was quite the impressive sight. It was 33.5 meters long and had a 6.7 meter wide cylinder on the outside for rolling and a smaller cylinder within that for passengers. The 2 cylinders had about 1.5 meters of space between each other, and the ship was powered by 2 steam engines that were able to rotate the outer cylinder through the use of spur gear rails. In the center of this cylinder were paddles that were arranged around the entirety of its circumference, which would be used to grab the water and push the ship forward. The passengers would have an enclosed space within the inner cylinder and were supposed to experience no motion whatsoever, and had outer platforms that did not rotate so that they could get fresh air. Knapp believed that his ship would also be capable of great speeds, with another claimed capability of it being able to reach 52 knots. Despite its unique and different design, trials in Toronto Bay would again result in disappointment for yet another inventor. While it was successful in its rolling action over the water, it also was unable to reach adequate speeds that would be necessary to secure interest. It also had an issue in that it was difficult to control and quickly lost the interest of the public and potential investors. Despite this, Knapp continued to work on solutions and even envisioned larger versions of his roller ship being constructed. This included a ship with a length of 243 meters and capable of holding 240 million pounds of grain. As we do not see 800-foot roller ships crossing the ocean today, it can be said that this design did not go anywhere. The ship would continue to be tested until it found itself pushed into the mud by strong winds and prompted Knapp to modify the design. Following a retrofit in which he added conical points to either side of the ship and making it into a massive cigar-shaped vessel with new engines, it was towed back to Toronto. Unfortunately, Knapp found himself out of money and unable to continue tests. Due to World War I, the ship was cannibalized for metal scrap and left to rot at its moorings. In 1927, the city enacted an expansion plan and the roller boat found itself buried under the new shoreline. Recently, using documents, survey plans, and Google Maps, the location was discovered under the Gardner Expressway and perpendicular to Lake Shore Boulevard. Depending on the way in which it was buried and the construction work done since 1927, it is entirely possible that the ship is still in one piece. So for any viewers living in Toronto, you may have unknowingly walked or driven over a rare object of maritime history. As with many vehicles covered on this channel, the idea of roller ships was one that had, in theory, the potential to revolutionize its respective design industry, but was quickly found that it was entirely unfeasible in practice. Despite the enthusiasm and refusal to quit from their creators, the Bazin and Knapp roller ships found themselves as a design that just could not overcome their limitations with the technology of their time. It is equally unfortunate that neither were preserved, but we can be thankful that documentation, although relatively scarce, still exists so that they may continue to exist in our minds today. So what do you think of these unconventional ships? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like on it as well as subscribing so you don't miss future episodes. Thanks to all of you for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video.